We're live. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining us. I just want to learn about who you are and what you do and how you got to where you are. So, if you don't mind, kind of sharing your background and your story.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the invite, Danielle. I really appreciate it. I'm new to Substack. As I shared with you earlier, I've been a fairly strong, I guess, an active participant in LinkedIn for about a year now. I was pretty dormant, but my background is really the food industry. And I mean, if and some of the things I might share with you today, you'll be able to connect the dots a little bit. But if you go way, way, way back, I used to work with my mom in the kitchen, and she was of Greek heritage and loved food. And she ended up getting into the catering business. So I was her right arm. I was her server, her bartender, her prep cook. I did everything. And it got me inspired in an early age to want to get into the food industry. She had a friend that taught cooking classes. And the next thing you know, I'm having a conversation about going to a culinary school. I'm like, I never thought about that in my entire life. Here I am in high school trying to figure out what my life's journey is going to be. And the next thing you know, I'm applying to the Culinary Institute of America up in Hyde Park, New York, a very prestigious culinary school. I was honored to be able to go there. I spent several years in the food space as a chef, cooking in kitchens, mostly private clubs, but also restaurants, country clubs. I mean, I kind of dabbled in a lot of different things. And then I took a side turn because I found how challenging the work life and schedule was. It was 7 days a week. It was sometimes 3 weeks nonstop without a day off. It was day, night, you name it. But I did get my first, as an executive chef, I got my first taste into leadership. And I surely at a young age in my 20s, I didn't have a clue. But then I took a sidestep and actually still stayed in the food industry, but got into sales. And so I worked for a food distributor that sold to the same type of clients that I was actually part of. So
Interesting.
it was a bit of a fairly easy transition in terms of my knowledge base, right? I understood food, I could talk the language, but I didn't know anything about sales at all. I mean, nothing.
I understand from an entrepreneurship perspective because that is not my strong suit for sure.
Yeah, and so like my mom, I have the gift of gab, so I'm extroverted. So it just naturally it helped me, and I found my way, and I found success in sales. And then the next thing you know, I'm getting tapped on the shoulder and saying, "Oh, we'd like you to be a leader." I'm like, "Okay, well," and kind of the rest is history. 30 plus years later, I've been in leadership at all different levels in the food industry, probably now close to 40 years, which is unbelievable. I'm actually getting ready to retire full time from working for a food cooperative. Um, but then
Congratulations.
well, thank you for that. I turned 65 by age, but I surely don't feel 65.
You don't look
Actually,
65.
well, thank you for that. I just turned 65 in April. It was kind of a strange feeling getting my Medicare card. I was like, and signing up for AARP. I'm like, really? This doesn't seem possible. I was thinking of my parents at the time. And so now, but the cool part about what I've been doing the last 3 years is embedded in my executive leadership position that I've been in. I was asked to take on training and development. So here I am. I've got close to 40 years in leadership. I'm in all different geographies. To add some perspective, I worked in the Washington, D.C. area, Philadelphia area. Then I was out in Southern California for a number of years. So I was in North Carolina for 6 years. So I really had geographical differences, role differences, all of that kind of gives you life and leadership perspective at all different levels. And so um, I got this training and development responsibility in my current role. And I was like, I really like this stuff. I like teaching it. I like learning it. I can tap into my 30 years of all my stumbles and bumbles and failures. And I had plenty of them for sure. And I can leverage that. Because I didn't want to sit idly by at the age of 65 and just like put my feet up and watch TV all day. I felt like that
Right.
wasn't very productive. And I wanted to use my brain. And how could I give back better than a legacy of teaching others around leadership skills that I learned the hard way? And so I've been doing that for my company. I actually, right now, I just literally launched this past month 4 cohorts, total of
Oh,
50
awesome.
people.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm leading them on a leadership journey. They're all at different levels. Some are CEOs, some are mid level leaders, some are senior leaders. They're in all different functional areas, all different companies. And so I have these 4 cohorts, and we meet monthly. And in between, I provide them some guidance. And in fact, I just sent a communication out just a little while ago about a session we just had this week on feedback, and a very deep discussion around that. And I'm doing it over the next year with them. So we're on a journey of development, realizing that leadership change and development takes time. It takes discipline. And it's like going to the gym and doing your reps. It really is. And you've got to repeat them and be consistent over and over. Because I approach things from a very behavioral point of view. I believe that you're not born a leader, you're made a leader. You're made it through development. You're made it through habits that you create for yourself, just like anything else in your life. And they can be taught. And that's what I teach. And that's what I continue to learn myself. So the journey has been amazing. And the next phase for me is to get into leadership coaching and supporting people from all over. And I'm super excited about this next phase of my
That's
career and
awesome.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, and congratulations. I mean, it sounds like you're off to a great start, right? With the 4 cohorts. That's amazing.
Yeah, it gives me and the company is keeping me on actually after I
Mhm.
retire as a contractor for an indefinite period of time to
Right.
support their succession planning and leadership development. So I'm super excited about that. I got certified with the Center of Leadership Studies as well. I'm a Marshall Goldsmith certified executive coach now. I adore Marshall Goldsmith. For anybody that follows Marshall, I think he's probably one of the best leadership coaches in the world. Um, he has a very simple methodology that is just a great approach from a behavioral foundation, and he believes, and in his thousands and thousands of people that have gone through his leadership development, the ones he's taught himself. In fact, he was so confident in his ability to coach. Of course, he would vet people out before he would say yes, but he was so confident in his ability to help people from a leadership perspective that he would say, if you don't improve, you don't pay me one penny. So he would put his money where his mouth was. And that's the way he approached leadership development. He would go in a contingent basis, and he used something like a 360. He calls it today the mini survey. He would only sign people up for at least 6 months, mostly a year, if not longer, because he realized change is hard.
Yes. And it takes time. And
It
you're not
does.
going to see the results. I mean, it's going to be really hard to see results in 6 months unless it's something specific that you're truly working on one skill or one type of leadership development. Because and you're speaking my language because I companies have done leadership development training that, oh, let's do training and then
Yeah.
nothing, right? And I'm
No.
like, how is this still a thing, right? And I remember sitting
Yeah.
in training when I was in corporate, and they would have these trainers come in once a month, and we would all sit there. They would have, different cohorts, so the different
Hmm.
groups, right? They would sit there,
Yeah.
and we'd have a day where we'd sit there and we'd get in groups, and then we'd come back, and then we'd go back to work the next day like it never
Yeah.
happened. And it's
Yeah.
just, I don't know why it's still being handled that way. It makes me crazy. That's such a soapbox that I stand on, because it's leadership is not a one and done training, and it makes me crazy. I actually have a call after this with a potential client that, I said
Mm.
I approach it from a holistic perspective, and do
Yeah.
the coaching and the training, and we look at what you learned and how you implemented it, and we refine on those skills of what you did, and then you can go back and work on it more. And that's, I don't know why more. I think it's just easier just to check the box, I guess.
It is, and many companies do that, and I've worked for many companies who do that.
Yes.
Leadership is a little package. It's a workshop. It's a course, and once you're through the other side of it, a 1 day, a 1 week,
Yes.
whatever, then you've officially now, been made it to the other side of being a better leader, and that's a fatal mistake that everyone makes. And
Yes.
I've been a part of so many of those, and Marshall says, no, we're not doing that. It's hard. And even more so, his philosophy and belief is that change is not in the eyes of the person, of the actual leader, it's in the eyes of their stakeholders.
Yep. The team.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
right. Their
Mm-hmm.
peers, their direct leader, those
Yes.
they have direct and immediate impact and influence on. And so I just got through a 9 month program with someone, and they had 9 stakeholders. And I did behavioral interviews up front in advance. They're a company based down in Louisiana. And this is a gentleman that's in a VP role and has an opportunity to be elevated to a higher level role when someone else retires. And so it was quite eye opening in that bit of a 360 that I did in the behavioral interviews to uncover things that were blind spots for that person coming from all of those 9 stakeholders.
Yeah.
And those 9 stakeholders had a vested interest in supporting this VP from a developmental standpoint, because the better he improved every single day, his interactions with them would change immensely. And
Mm-hmm.
so he's been on a journey over the last 9 months, and he's made significant progress. And we use the mini survey to measure his progress from the eyes of the stakeholders. Critical. Not looking in the mirror and saying, where am I? It's looking around me and saying, from a social perspective,
Right.
in those I have been impact with. And for him, what he's also seen is a dramatic change in his own personal life and his relationship with his wife because of some of the progress that he's made.
It
So this
carries
is
over.
life stuff. It
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah, it
really
carries
is.
over for sure. And
Yeah.
I think the 360 review, or the mini survey that you speak of,
Mm,
that I think that is accurate. That is
it
what, like,
is.
that's providing an accurate view of what their behavior is in organizations. And that's giving you a great framework to use, or blueprint to use, to work with that person, because I think that's there's nothing else that could tell you any better, because how they're interacting with the people around them every day, they're the ones that can share the most.
That's right. And the old saying, perception is reality, is the
Yes.
truth. And the
Mhm.
perception of the stakeholders is what you have to work on. In fact, it's a bit of a lagging indicator. It takes much longer to change the perception of a stakeholder. Even though you may have changed, they see you longer as you were before, as you're moving through the change process.
That's a great point. That's just like
Yeah,
building trust, right? Once
that's
you,
right.
like, it takes time to build trust, but when you break it, it takes longer to get it back.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, built into that framework is every month that person must be getting feedback and feed forward. So their connection with each of the stakeholders to get what happened the last 30 days that you observed,
Mhm.
and what else could I be doing the next 30 days. So I kind of, the best visual I describe, because for the longest time I was in one-on-ones or in a review, I was providing feedback. That's only half of the equation, and quite honestly, it's not necessarily the best half of the equation because it's something that someone cannot change. When I'm providing something that's already happened, the natural instinct for that person when I'm delivering the message, no matter my tone, no matter my style, is defensiveness,
Yeah.
is guardedness, excuse making, because they can't change what I'm now providing to them. Think of the rear view mirror and the narrow view of what you see right behind you. You've passed it. You can't change what you've passed, but you can change the future. And that's what the windshield represents. So when I explain to the stakeholders, it's important for them to learn feed forward so that they can say to that leader, I'd like to see more of this from you. I'd like to see less of this from you, as an example, right? And so it gives them an opportunity to do something about it because they haven't acted on it yet. It's in the future, and the conversation goes much better when that
I'm sure.
happens.
I'm
Yeah.
sure. So when you interview and you do the mini survey for the stakeholders around them, right? The people that they're
Mhm.
working with, how do you present that? Do you present that to your client, to the person that you're coaching?
Yes. In fact, I'm actually literally last week, I just got the results of the mini survey, and it
Mhm.
was super positive. And what it provides is a rating measurement of improvement. And then it also provides some anonymous language, right? Some advice, some
Mhm.
key points that where they've seen progress or where they haven't seen progress, and uh, this VP will get direct feedback and feed forward from that mini survey. But the I will tell you the significant changes that have been made are unbelievable in the last 9 months. And he did it with the work of the stakeholders. He did it himself. He was willing, first, he had the courage to say, I'm going to change. He had the courage to accept feedback and feed forward that was painful, that was somewhat negative, that was, blind spots for him that he probably knew somewhere deep inside of him, and when it got exposed in those interviews, I can tell you it was painful to share, but we moved past it, we looked forward, and then he started to do the work, he started to do the repetitions, he started to make the change, and he got constant feedback and feed forward every single month. As part of the process is he must meet, not long, 3 to 5 minutes with each person. It's very quick and very direct. What have you seen in the last 30 days you'd like to share with me? What would you like me to continue to work on over the next 30 days? As simple as that. 3 to 5 minute conversation. It doesn't even have to be formal. You could be walking down the hall and saying, hey, these are the two behaviors or one behavior I'm working on. What have you seen in the last 30 days? What would you like me to continue to focus on in the next 30 days? It's that simple.
And that's what I struggle with too. So I think another one of my convictions, right, is
Mm,
the higher people go, the less feedback they get.
100%.
And it's so crazy to me because they have so much more impact on the organization the higher they go. And no one's there to tell them, hey, you might
No.
want to look at it this way. Or when you do that, this is how it's received. No
Hmm.
one's got the courage or the desire. I don't want to say even because people, we're all busy. Everybody's busy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, I think the thought comes into people's minds like, this person could do this better or whatever, but they don't have that relationship, or they don't have the time or take the time, or to have those conversations. And I mean, I can speak just from a middle manager I was, and I
Mm,
wasn't getting feedback, on ways I
mm-mm.
could improve. So, everything was just, status quo, good, whatever, and um, I think that's something that is missing as well. So, the one and done leadership trainings, and then the lack of feedback the higher you go.
Yeah,
Because, if I was a middle manager not getting feedback, can you even imagine what the senior managers weren't getting feedback on? And
yeah.
so it's so interesting to me that leadership is so important in organizations, and it makes or breaks it. And then we send them to one and done trainings, and we throw them at the people and say, okay, go be a leader. And
Mm,
then don't tell them if they're
no.
failing, or don't tell them that they're failing based on some metric that you're measuring with production or something, but not with with leadership skills and things like that.
Yeah, all great points. I mean, first of all, the senior leaders, it's lonely at the top. It's
Yes.
lonely because
Mhm.
you don't have anybody to talk to your
Mhm.
point. And managing up is one of the most difficult things you can do, right? So if you're a direct report of the president, of the CEO, and I was in that position several years ago. For 9 years, I ran a division for a food distribution company, and I had at one point 375 employees. And I knew, despite the fact that you could convince yourself, oh, everyone's going to share with me. No, they
I'm
don't.
approachable. Yeah.
That's right. My open door
Hmm.
policy, of
Hmm.
course. Everyone's going to come in and tell Rob exactly what's on their mind. No, not at
Hmm.
all. You got to work really hard to create
Hmm.
conditions within which people are even willing to give you the feedback and feed forward you desperately need. That's where one on ones, in my opinion, uh, in fact, I've created a couple very detailed modules around the art of one on one because I believe that that is the most important meeting that exists in business. That
I think
time spent,
you're very right.
yeah. And there's four critical elements that must and only reside within a one on one. First, they tend to be update meetings.
Hmm.
Yep, give me a status update on this. And then they also tend to be directional from the top down. It's an interrogation, right? Tell me about this. I want to know about that. Give me an update on that. Where's that project stand? And you're just getting pummeled with questions from the leader about what's going on. None of that, not 1 ounce of that should exist in a one on one meeting.
I agree.
Zero. But so many are conducted that way. So they're either update meetings or the leader doesn't take them seriously. So they're always being rescheduled, they're always being canceled, or in many cases, they don't exist.
Yeah, very true. And I think that that's what I always had my employee drive the one to one.
Yes.
So whenever I would have a one to one with them, I would give them, based on my conversation with them at their annual review or whatever, I would give them the things like, where do you want to grow and develop? Like, what do you want to work on? And then that's what I would give them, like, okay, this is what I think our one-to-ones should look like. If that's what your
Hmm.
goal is and that's where you want to get. These are the things. That's my suggestion. You do
Right.
what you want it to do, run it however you want, but this is your opportunity to, ask any questions, get any support. Tell me, if your plans changed and you want to grow in a different direction, or, if you saw this opportunity or anything like
Hmm.
that. And then also, what can I better do to support you? That's a question I always ask, because
Hmm.
I'm there to remove roadblocks. As a leader, that's what my job was.
That's
So
right.
I needed to remove roadblocks and provide the best opportunity for the team to be successful, right? And so, if they were struggling with somebody on the team, I could coach them through that, or I could address it if I need to, So
Hmm.
it was just those one to ones. I don't know that leaders were ever trained to have them. I think one
No,
day we just said, hey, you've got to have one to ones with your team,
exactly.
and nobody ever told them what they should look like.
That's exactly
And I,
right.
yeah, and so I think everybody's like, okay, well, we're here. Now what? What do
Yeah,
what do you got? Because what else are they going to talk about? That's the first thing that comes to mind. I'm going to have
yeah.
to report out on this at my weekly executive meeting. So
Hmm.
tell me what the status is.
That's right. Yeah, no, I know I surely wasn't taught, and I just started doing them all the wrong way. I did update meetings forever. I did interrogations forever. And fortunately, I got some guidance at one point and said, Rob, you're doing it all wrong. And so, really, to your point, number one priority is what can I do to remove obstacles, challenges, and issues that are getting in your way? That's first and foremost. I got to understand what can I get out of your way, right? Number two, we've got to have feedback and feed forward. One great thing is to ask your direct, say, hey, what would you like to see more of or less of from me?
Mhm.
I'm using now the forward, right? Feed
Yep.
forward language of
Hmm.
more of, less of, right? What would you like to see more of from me? What would you like to see less of from me? So feedback both directions has to happen. It's got to be balanced. Third is you do have to have that career and individual development plan and aspirational discussion with them. Where do you see yourself? What would you like to do? Is there a stretch project that you'd like to be involved with that's outside of maybe the scope of your current role today, that would challenge you, that would excite you, that you feel could add great value to the organization, right? Like those kinds of conversations. And then finally, relationship building has to happen.
Yep.
And it's not, hey, what did you do this weekend? That is so superficial.
Mhm.
How can we ask deeper open-ended questions, right, to our team to really understand them as a human being, as a person, what's going on in their life, because all of that comes into play with everything else that we're trying to do in their support. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So those four things should only exist, nothing else. Those are the four pillars, and you can rotate through them. And typically, initially, it's very awkward when you're handing it off to your direct saying, hey, you own the agenda,
Mhm.
right? But when you give them a framework within which to work, then it gets them thinking about the topics and questions and things they want to discuss. And then it becomes, a much more employee led conversation with a little bit of elements of you in, right? It's much more of a collaborative discussion and not this top down. And that's where managing up can actually start to come to life because you've created a better condition, right? And think about the leaders that don't do one on ones that way, or the ones that cancel them all the time, or don't do them at all. What do
Or
you
show
think
up
happens?
late,
Yeah, that's
right?
right. Or they're
Regularly. Yeah.
distracted, they're not
Yep.
present, right? All those things. Imagine what happens in the annual review now
Yeah.
that they get.
Yeah. Hmm. It's
The
all a
employees
surprise, right?
blindsided,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know you thought about me that way. You didn't
Hmm.
give me any observational coaching, and yet now I'm walking in and I'm learning that I'm below par
Expectations.
in
Yep.
this area of my business. And I had
Mhm.
no idea because you never really told me. You weren't honest enough to tell me.
Mhm.
Right? So it happens
Mhm.
all day, every day. Such a
Yeah.
fatal mistake from a leadership perspective.
Yeah. And I will say that, of my team of six, every
Mm,
one-to-one looked different because each individual was driving it, right?
yeah.
With my support and guidance, right? So, if somebody wanted to go be an HRBP, like if they shared that with me, then I was
Mm,
able to get them into, maybe there was a cross-functional team that was working towards maybe create or revamping a policy, things like that that HRBPs do, that they
hmm.
may not have had the opportunity had I not known that or had that
That's
conversation
right.
with them. So it's those types of things that, and we all get busy. We all have one-to-ones that, I mean, it depends on how often you have them.
Yeah,
That's another cadence that
it
is
is.
hard to figure out, and I don't know that it's one size fits all either.
It isn't.
So
It
like
isn't.
some I would have once a month, some I would have once every 2 weeks. With new hires, I had them once a week so that I could make sure that I
Right.
checked in and made sure that they were, feeling comfortable and having a good experience.
Hmm.
So it just depends, I think, on, the situation and the people and all of that.
You're 100% right. There is no one size fits all, and the cadence
Mm-mm.
can vary for an employee or even in a specific period of time. You may have a tenured employee, but
Mhm.
they may have a lot on their plate and they may
Mhm.
need more engagement right now for the next 90 days than they typically would. So maybe you do need to elevate. And that's a conversation you want to have. What I'd ask them, I wouldn't dictate what the cadence is. How often do you think we should get together? Right? What do you think feels right now for where you're at? Right?
Yeah, because
Is
the
that
last thing you want to do is if they're overwhelmed and busy, add more meetings to their calendar.
correct? That's right.
Yeah.
The other mistake that people make, and I do this with my cohorts, and they laugh a little bit because I make it a point. I have 50-minute meetings. Okay, not an hour, 50 minutes. I do that, and I say, look, you're going to have 10-minute turnaround time, whether it's a bio break, a refresh. Let me cleanse my mind. But how often today in business do we run from meeting to meeting to meeting, top of the hour, bottom of the hour? Everything is scheduled that way. And there's no time to even separate our brain from one thing we were in to the next thing that we're going into. And quite honestly, you could have been in a challenging conversation with someone or a one-on-one,
And you're carrying it.
and you have no time to just
Mhm.
clear your mind for a second. Now you're walking into the next meeting and you now have all of that still. You're
Yep.
probably carrying it in your body language and your facial expressions and your tone. You're thinking about it. You're probably not present.
Yep.
All of those
Oh my.
things.
Yeah, that you're
Yeah.
you're speaking my past corporate experience, my most
Mm.
recent corporate experience. I was in meetings from like 9 in the morning until
Oh,
5. So it was every hour there was another meeting, and I'd have like a
yeah.
half hour open for lunch, and then somebody would grab it on my calendar, and it was just like, and I get hangry,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna have to get fed. So we're gonna either go eat lunch together, or I'm gonna grab food, and you're gonna talk to me while I eat, one of the two. But it's,
Mhm.
people don't, it, it's such a meeting heavy environment, and I
Oh,
don't, there's how many meetings that could have been emails. And
yes.
half the time you're sitting there wondering, why in the hell am I even here? Why isn't this something that these people, maybe a smaller group, could have made a decision about?
Hmm.
Yeah, there, and I burn out in corporate. And
Oh,
if you think about it, why in the heck? Of course, I'm sitting in meetings from 8 to 5.
yeah,
It's just crazy. And
it is.
then when am I actually getting my work done?
Yeah,
And then you sit down to do your work when you do get time at your desk, and it's an open office environment. So next thing you know, here comes somebody with a question, and you're like, I had 1 hour
that's
today,
right.
and you just took up 15 minutes of it. So
That's right. So
yeah.
you're exactly right. So a couple things. One, lead by example. Set 50-minute meetings, 20-minute meetings, not 30 and
Mhm.
not 60, as one simple example, right?
That's a great
Number
idea.
two,
And
make
stick to the
stake.
agenda. Stick to it.
That's right. Determine
Mhm.
who really needs to be in the meeting, to your point. Do we need to have all these 10 people, or is it just these four? Right? Make sure you've got a purpose to the meeting, a true purpose for the meeting. If you can't determine what the purpose is, then the meeting should be canceled,
Mm-mm.
right? Simple as that.
And what's
Make me,
10?
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, make me time for yourself. If you looked at my calendar today, you're going to see blocks of time that are protected time so I can think.
Yes. Yes. You're not reacting it for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day.
Mm-mm.
You're
No.
actually able to be strategic and think about, okay, out of everything that I've got, on my plate, what do I need to focus on? And
Hmm.
I think the big thing too is I saw something recently. I don't know if it was on Substack or if it was LinkedIn, where, but what is the purpose of the meeting? Like you mentioned, right? So,
Hmm.
are you making a decision in that meeting, or are you developing a plan? Like
Hmm.
what else is coming out of that meeting?
Yeah.
Those two things. And then if if those aren't the reason for the meeting, does the meeting really need to happen?
That's right. Yeah, send an email with updating
Yes.
people. And if anybody has any questions, then they can communicate. But so
Mhm.
many meetings are updates, just like one-on-ones. It's what we know, it's what we're comfortable with. And if the leader is driving that, the CEO, the ultimate leader of the organization, then it puts pressure on everyone to come to the meeting with some type of status update because that's what they're looking for. And I've been a part of that too often, and it's painful. And you feel like you're just saying stuff to fill a void because you're in a pressurized situation because that's what the expectation of that meeting. Exactly.
And that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that can be done in a Google sheet, right? You
Yes,
just
it can.
update where you are by
Yeah.
Friday at noon. Okay.
Yeah.
Rather than going to sit in a meeting for an hour while everybody else updates.
That's right.
You
Yeah.
can take
Just
a,
read it. And if you have questions, communicate to the person
hmm
that put the note out there, get clarity, and that's it. There's no
hmm
need for the meeting. Yeah, exactly.
We can
So
solve the world's problems, Rob.
I I think business could be much more efficient, couldn't it? And people could
Right?
be
Oh my
focused on
goodness.
the work at hand instead of just updating each other on things. Yeah, for sure.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm
So now people are probably thinking if anybody's following me on Substack, and I'm still fairly new to Substack. I've been a heavy LinkedIn guy for about a year now. In fact, probably before a year ago, it was my resume, like right, most people.
hmm
And I decided to get more active, to share things from a leadership perspective that had been inside of me I've learned over the last 30 years. And so I say I got really serious about ten months ago. And if you go on now and look at I post almost every day of the week, and I put out a newsletter on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter, obviously, now on Substack that I'm excited to introduce to people. But they're going to see a lot of weird things, and they're going to be like trying to connect the dots with what's this plate? What's this fork? What's
The
this knife,
napkin.
Rob? The napkin. Like, what are you doing, Rob? Are you having dinner in Substack? Or so I'd like to at least clarify that a
Yes,
little bit,
please.
Danielle, because it really it goes back to where I started, which is with my mom. So my mom was a very formal person. It was important that every day the table was set, and she said it in a way and care and a loving environment. And I'm a little teary about it right now when I think about it because my mom passed away about a year ago. She was 96 years old. She
Oh,
had a
wow.
full life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny Greek lady, very, very, very just, she loved to cook for anybody. And that's where the catering came from. And as I observed her, I watched all these leadership things that really you couldn't necessarily at the moment define as leadership. But when I started to reflect back on her life and I was writing about leadership, and there's so much leadership out there today. If you go on LinkedIn or any social network, it's very generic, it's very the same, it's very vanilla, right? And I wanted to bring something to life that was both personal and relevant. And so I created from my mom's, image of this place setting, this formal place setting, right? Setting the table, caring for others, all these things, that each part of the place setting represents something very critical in leadership. And that is what's called the place setting framework and playbook that I've created that I talk about all day on
Mhm.
both LinkedIn and now on Substack, and that's why you see the images of a plate and a fork and a knife. And so simplistically, the plate is the foundation of leadership. That is your character. That is your integrity. Without it, if that plate cracks, there's no relationship, there's no trust. But foundationally, when you set that plate down at a table, that's what everything is served on now, isn't it?
Mhm.
So you can start to, from an imagery perspective, And I love images. They tell a story. They make us think about things. When I was talking about the rear view mirror versus the windshield earlier, you can see the difference between big, wide view and very narrow view and how that relates to feedback and feed forward, right? And that's how I explain it to myself and to others. But that's the foundation, the plate in the place setting, right? And then the knife, when you think about the knife cuts both ways. It has a sharp edge and a dull edge on it, right? So how are we providing feedback and feed forward, right? How are we going from results and relationship and moving back and forth when it's most needed? We need both edges of the knife, right, for balance, but that's really what the knife represents. And then the fork is about growth, right, and choice, right? So the fork is about, if you think about it, that's what we use to consume our meal, right? And that growth is from within us first. We can't develop others and support others unless we are invested first in our own self. So how are we feeding ourselves? How are we feeding our growth? Are we truly a student of development and leadership, right? Are we curious about things, right? So you can start to see what comes to life: the plate, the knife, the fork, right? Then we get into the spoon, and the spoon is about nourishing others. How are we feeding them? How are we nourishing them in their development, right? First us, then them. Fork feeding us, spoon feeding them. Are we having those one-on-one conversations about what their aspirations are, what their career looks like, what they would like to be involved in from a stretch perspective, right? And then we have the glass. And the glass can either be cloudy or it can be clear. So that's all about communication as a leader, which is so critical. How many times are we misunderstood and we say to ourselves, I know I didn't say that, but yet that's what people interpreted.
Yeah, and that's what they heard. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So it's clarity and transparency. How honest are we being about a particular topic or a strategy or something going on in the organization? So are we leaving people in a cloudy and fogged environment, or are we providing clarity through that glass, right? And then the napkin is how we treat everyone with dignity in these small moments, right? When you'd think it doesn't matter, when we respond to somebody in a hallway, walking down the hall, and we are the senior leader, and maybe they are a brand new employee, and we acknowledge them. How simple but yet impactful those things can have. That's the dignity and the subtleness of the napkin. So now you can start to see that the place setting has a place in leadership. And then finally, everything sits on the table, right? That is our legacy, right? That's everything. That's the space. That's where we say, please, no matter who you are, join me at the table, right? Be with me at the table. You're welcome at the table. And when you think about life, in fact, my newsletter on LinkedIn, I call it Breaking Bread. And my newsletter on Substack is called The Leadership Table. But isn't everything we do in life, when we get together with our family, with our friends, with our coworkers, aren't the best times the most trusted relationship times around a meal? A graduation, a celebration of promotion, a wedding, a death. Getting together on the week. What are we getting ready to do this weekend? It's Memorial Day weekend. How many people are going to cook out and enjoy something on the grill together? They're breaking bread. Think of the history of breaking bread and what it means to bring people together, to join people at the table, right? And so you can start to see that when I share a plate image, or I share a fork image, or a knife image, or the spoon or the napkin. It has meaning behind it. And it relates to leadership in a way that's very personal to me, because it reflects back on my mom and how she carried herself and the burden she took on in taking care of not only her family, but I remember when her parents had to move in with us when I was a young
Mhm.
teenager because they couldn't take care of themselves. And that we were just trying to make ends meet. And then my father got sick. And what helped us financially was the catering business. So we weren't making enough money.
Mhm.
She needed to help support the family. She didn't question or say, I can't do that. She was one of these kinds of persons that would just take on whatever it took, however hard the season was. And so that's the memory of her that I also carry forward in my place setting framework, because it's something very, very personal to me.
That's awesome. I love that story. And she was a mom, right? So
It
she did
was
whatever she needed to do.
exactly right. That's what moms
Mhm.
do, don't they?
Yep.
They take on everything on their shoulders,
Yep. Yep.
everything, and then some. And
Mhm.
so it's her legacy to me,
Mhm.
and then I can carry it forward and share it with
Absolutely.
others. And it's
Mhm.
not just this generic, thing
Right.
about leadership, right? I'm speaking of a place and what's all woven all into it is this Marshall Goldsmith methodology,
Mhm.
right? This approach to behavioral development, and that stakeholders matter, and that at the core of all of it, feedback and feed forward is one of the most critical elements that we can give ourselves. When you think of the hundreds and thousands of times that we are getting and receiving and delivering feedback every day in our
Mhm.
personal life and professional life, how important is it to get great at something like that?
Oh, very, very true. Especially if you want to be a leader, right?
That's exactly right.
And feedback, excuse me, feedback can be good and feedback can be constructive. It doesn't, it's you by telling somebody, hey, you did a great job with this project,
Yes,
they need that feedback too. That
that's right.
feedback's important too.
That's right.
So, not just those tough conversations, but by sharing the feedback of the, hey, great job on this project, you're opening that door and building that trust. So when you do need to give constructive feedback, they trust you, they want to hear it, they want to know what you see because they see that they did something that you approved of or agreed with. So I think feedback and both the positive and the constructive, I think, are very, very valuable.
It is. And I think back to a leader I had, and this is when I was early in my career. I was a VP of sales at the time. And I was one of these micromanaging, metric driven leaders that naturally you kind of lean one way or the other. You're either relationship driven and you're not so focused on accountability, or you're results driven and everything's about accountability and the numbers. And I was kind of that way, right? I definitely didn't have balance in my life. And I had a leader that when I walked into that new environment with him, he taught me things that helped me shape and reshape the balance that I needed in the way that I led and the way I coached, right? And that if you want to truly be an admired leader, you have to strike the balance between both of them. You have to understand when to turn one on. That's the knife, sharp edge, soft edge, right? When do you use the sharp edge from an accountability standpoint? When do you use the soft edge from a relationship standpoint? Being instinctive and understanding when to do that is critical in leadership. And that's something you have to get good at. It's not something that's just going to come naturally, right? And so he taught me that balance between the two. And he gave me the feedback and feed forward I needed. And it was painful in the beginning. But then I became receptive to it after a while, realizing that it was coming from a place of care and not to diminish me. It was to make me better. And I carried that forward. I've carried that forward the rest of my career and realized how critical that is. But You have to have both if you're going to be an admired leader.
Yeah.
You have to.
And I actually wrote a article. I actually recorded the podcast yesterday, I think, on it.
Mm,
And it talks about culture and accountability and the importance
mhm,
of accountability in culture. And,
mm.
whenever we don't give feedback as leaders, um, we're being unkind.
We are.
Because if someone doesn't know that they're doing something wrong or, they could do something better, that's our fault. That's
Mhm,
not their fault if we didn't tell
mm-mm,
them. And
mm-mm,
so that's what's really frustrating to me whenever I see poor leadership or leaders
mm.
avoiding those tough conversations because they're doing such a disservice to who that employee could ultimately become or be in that role if they had the feedback. But if they
Mhm.
don't have the feedback and they don't have those conversations, you know, it's sad because you're hurting their potential.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so
Yeah,
feedback is, constructive feedback is kind.
it really is. It's funny. I heard this story. I was not in the room at the time, but this was a CEO next to a person that was getting ready to retire. And they were celebrating their 30 plus years in their career. And the CEO, was first congratulating the person. And he said, if you had only done this,
Oh, oh,
right?
yeah.
And the guy was like, why didn't you tell
Now
me
you
that
tell me,
10
right?
years ago? Right. And
Mm,
so you're right. We are not being kind when we're holding things back, but there is that right way of feedback and feed forward. And that's where people struggle or they're scared to have that conversation. They don't know how to approach it, so they avoid it.
mhm.
And avoidance is the worst thing you can do because people deserve to know the truth. Now, you have to understand that you're coming from an observational opinion point of view. It doesn't make it so because I'm the leader and I'm telling you it's an opinion, right? So we have to understand that, um, and the person receiving it has to understand it's an opinion. This is what
Yeah,
I'm observing.
and sharing that. I
That's
had
right.
an employee that I had employees complaining about my one employee, right? So
Hmm.
I went into a room. I was like, hey, let's chat. So we go chat, and I was like, hey, I don't see it. I don't know,
Mm.
but I want to tell you because we have a small team and we have a big project. So I want to let you know what's being said and you can take what you want with it because I haven't seen it and I don't know if it's truly happening.
Right.
However, it's only fair to you to share what the perception of the team is. And so
That's right.
that's the way I approached it and he was very grateful that I shared that and then everything got better. And the thing is understanding that you may not be coming from and that doesn't mean that like if somebody says, "Oh, so Joe's being a jerk." That's
Hmm.
not, if that's just a one off or something like
Yeah.
that, I'm not going to run to it. But if I'm hearing it from multiple members of the team, I'm going to bring it to you and explain it and say, I haven't seen it. I haven't witnessed it personally. However, this is the perception, and we've got a really big project that we're working on. So I need
Hmm.
everybody to be able to work together well. So take what you can from the conversation and, and whether it's something you need to change it. If not, just let it go. And he was very grateful and thankful that conversation happened.
Hmm. Yeah, well, that what it makes me think of is high utility and low utility feedback. So here's a
Mhm.
good example. If I just go to you, Danielle, and I said, "You're amazing, Danielle. What you did yesterday was awesome," and that's all I say. Using words like awesome, amazing, spectacular, all that stuff makes you feel good for one moment. It's positive, but it's low utility. You can't do anything with it. I need to have more substance to what is amazing, what is spectacular, what is challenging, what is whatever. And so we often, you know, throw a lot of these great general accolades out that are very low utility and really don't help our team much at all, other than make them feel good for a split second.
Yep, very true.
Yeah. So you have to think about And what I'm saying, both from a critical perspective and a positive perspective, is it low utility or high utility? And the question is, can the person I'm delivering it to do anything with it?
Yeah.
Does it bring any value to them?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point too, because a lot of times we think, oh, we did recognize them, right? We did say, hey, great
Yeah.
job, but then we didn't say great job at what, and when, especially when you did this,
Hmm.
you know, just expanding on it kind of helps to, further develop that person and let them know, like, hey, I want to see more of this. And
That's
it
right.
may have been the smallest part of their presentation, but if it was something, so.
That's
Well,
right.
I really appreciate you joining me today. I do want to, I have a 11 o'clock, but I do want to jump into one other thing that you and I chatted about because I made
Yeah.
the connection on it while we were talking.
Mm,
And I said I wanted to share something personal that people can connect on. And I asked
mm,
you like what cause or nonprofit or
mm.
speaks to you. And
Yeah.
when you told me what it was,
Mhm.
like there's a theme here. So go
There
ahead
is
and
a
share
theme.
it.
There is a theme. It's two of them. One, I would say, is more domestically driven. So if you're a United States uh, citizen or live in the US, the first one is Feeding America. And Feeding America, what I always like to look at causes to see how much of the funds actually go back to the cause itself. If you do any research on Feeding America, you will see that between 98 and 99%, they're one of the highest. They're the largest organization in the US, but they are also one of the highest in terms of percentage going back. We
Wow.
hear nonprofit, and then you read all this stuff and realize how nonprofit are they when the CEO is getting $1 million paycheck, right? As an
Yeah.
example, for administrative fees. But the
Mhm.
thing about Feeding America is that they truly back that up. So their lifeline are really over 200 food banks and 60,000 outlets for what they call food pantries throughout the country. In fact, my wife is dedicated really extensively with it. We have a church very close by. It's a Spanish speaking only church. My wife is from South America, Bolivia, so it pours her heart into supporting the Latin American community. And she invests the first month of, or first week of every month going there, and the food pantries come in, the food bank comes in, and they take all that food and they separate it, and then it gets distributed to families that are in need.
That's
So
awesome.
Feeding America from a US perspective, highly rated in terms of what they give back, great organization. And the second one is a world one that we should all be honoring, and that's a gentleman named Jose Andreas, and it's World Central Kitchen. If you see anything about World Central Kitchen, they are in Ukraine, they are in Gaza, they're there when there's these massive fires or hurricane disaster. And they have a team of chefs, again, culinary, that are out there feeding. In fact, what I'm doing for both Feeding America and the World Central Kitchen is as I launch my leadership coaching business, I am going to give 10% of every bit of my
Um,
sales equally to both organizations in a way to give back financially, as well as some of the local work that we do with the church and Feeding America. So, again, another organization that most of the money, just like Feeding America, goes back to where it matters, and that's to the people in need. So, obviously, yes, food related, culinary related, Feeding America, World Central Kitchen.
Thank you so much for sharing. And it's been so great to get to know you. I think we're going to do this again because this was a great
Uh,
conversation and you got me fired up. So,
Very good.
yeah, we can talk about leadership all day long, I think.
I think we
Um,
could.
so how can everybody get in touch with you?
I am on Substack, so hopefully you can connect with me. That's probably the simplest way. It's robertadamsleader.substack.com. I'm also, if you just type in Robert Adams Leader on LinkedIn, you'll see that I'm lively and out there. You're going to find different content on each platform. So whatever your flavor, but you will see a lot of plates, knives, spoons, and napkins and
There's a common
glasses.
thread.
There is.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rob. I hope you have a great day and a great long weekend.
Thank you so much. Have
All
a
right. Thank
great
you.
Memorial Day weekend. Thanks so
You
much.
too. Thank you. Bye
Yep.
bye.
Yep. Take care. Bye bye.